Hi, welcome to the Colorado Business Roundtable, virtual roundtable on issues that we're bringing to our partners and members on critical issues regarding the economy and Colorado, and a little bit about getting Colorado back on track in this current economic environment. Today, we're excited to talk about communications infrastructure with a really great panel that combines folks who are doing this work, private sector folks, and also some local officials and some statewide officials that can help shed some light on this important issue. So welcome today. I'm really excited to welcome, first I'll introduce Jan Kulmann, who is the mayor of Thornton, and she's also the director of facilities for Whiting Petroleum. Jan has spent her working career in the utility and oil and gas industries in both Texas and Colorado. And after moving to Thornton in 2007, she brought her leadership skills and her technical expertise in both process safety and environmental protection to the oil and natural gas industry. Jan's public service includes, she started out as president of the school board for a public charter school. Then she was elected to Thornton City Council, and now she serves as mayor for the city of Thornton. She brings a passion for working collaboratively and also brings in-depth technical expertise as a professional engineer to the job. And her goal is to make Thornton a great place for residents to live, work, and play. So welcome, Mayor Kulmann.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
You bet. And also excited to introduce to you Scott Harry. He is the Government Affairs Manager for Crown Castle, responsible for Crown's partnership with state and local municipalities in the Rocky Mountain region. He has held various roles in the wireless industry for more than 20 years and spends most of his free time raising 4 daughters in the Denver area and loves being outside in Denver's Colorado landscape. So welcome, Scott.
Hi, thanks, Debbie.
And last, I want to welcome Adam Zarrin. He's currently the Policy Operations Lead and Policy Advisor for the Office of Colorado Governor Jared Polis. He provides research, analysis, and advice regarding public policy, which include justice and safety, immigration, military and veterans, transportation, broadband and internet, technology, regulatory reform, and local and good government. Prior to his current position, Adam had a similar role for Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper. And Adam, that's quite a title. So welcome to the conversation, and we're so pleased that you could join us.
Thank you.
That's a lot to be in charge of. So we appreciate your time very much and what you do for the state of Colorado. So let's talk about communications infrastructure. I think I mentioned to all of you, I need infrastructure in my life so I can work remotely, so I can work at my office, so I can work, in my car if I need to. It's so important for remote learning right now. And maybe this first question goes to Scott, but what do you do? What is communications infrastructure for someone who just needs kind of a big picture viewpoint on the topic?
Sure. Yeah, so Crown Castle is a communication infrastructure provider. And so we essentially provide the communications infrastructure. So that's fiber, any kind of wireless structure, such as a small cell or a cell site. We provide that infrastructure as well as fiber in the ground. So we provide all of that infrastructure to our customers, and they range from governments to AT&T Wireless, Verizon Wireless, T-Mobile, schools. So we provide that infrastructure that keeps those groups running smooth with data consumption, whether it be through wireless or wireline.
And tell us a little bit more about Crown Castle, because some of our partners might be curious about the company. What's the footprint in Colorado?
Yeah, so in the nation, we own about 40,000 regular wireless cell sites that everybody's familiar with. We also own about between 60 and 70,000. The number varies, but we're close to 70,000 small cells in the United States. And we have about 60,000 route miles of fiber throughout the United States. And in Colorado, we have a pretty good footprint of wireless and fiber infrastructure as well.
Okay, great. And let me back up, because that's a big picture. Thanks, Scott, for that. But and appreciate hearing more about Crown Castle. Adam, tell us a little bit more about your role in the governor's office and how it relates to the conversation today. We'll start kind of big picture and then kind of dive back in.
Sure. I think, everyone knows Governor Polis, especially in Colorado. I hope everyone knows that today. The governor's had four big pillars that we have been focused on and what he ran on to get elected. Increasing access to education, making healthcare more affordable for Coloradans, changing or increasing the amount of investments in clean energy, and addressing some of the fiscal challenges that the state faces. Those have been the bold four that we have been striving for, both the legislature or through our agencies. And so my day-to-day is trying to deal with everything else that's makes government run. And so a colleague and I are our EcoDevo and workforce side of the shop, as well as just how do you make good governments. So I think that's how to describe the role in a nutshell.
And then before I jump to Mayor Kulmann, Adam, how has your role changed? I find it so interesting. What was really top of mind for me in January 2020, when I'm looking at the year and what our role is as Colorado Business Roundtable, is completely different than what fills my day now when we're thinking about economic recovery. Tell me how your role has changed the last couple months.
It's interesting. I think going into legislative session, we had a very ambitious agenda for what we wanted to try to accomplish for Colorado. I think what COVID has taught us that what we consider our bold four have never been more important, right? Right now, having affordable health care is top of mind for everybody, right? That's how we address some of the health inequities that exist in our communities, right? Seeking environmental justice for folks who have been disproportionately affected either by COVID or by redlining, for example, right? That is never more important than right now. I think the same is true for education. It's very true for some of the fiscal concerns. I think the mayor can speak to this too. The state budget has been affected by the downturn from COVID, and so have our local and county governments. And we all depend on economic activity, and we are, we want to get people back to work, but there's this really fine balance of how do you protect people's safety and health while also making sure that people can get back to work. The last couple of months have been very challenging. I cannot tell you how many calls I've had with people with business owners especially small business owners who have invested their lives in their business and are on the precipice of possibly losing that, and they've had to furlough people or place their employees on unemployment. And those calls have and continue to be some of the most difficult phone calls that I have to do, and it really just motivates us to really continue to work for how can we stabilize and get Colorado back on track to economic growth, because we just also are so dependent on that economic activity. And we had one of the best economies in the country, and we want to be back there real soon.
Mm-hmm. Well, we certainly share that commitment and have served in some capacities with your office on economic mobilization and growth, and trying to help businesses of every size rehire, recharge, restart, because certainly that's the way to have our economy back on track, like you said. Luckily, Colorado is in really good shape, so hopefully if we get through this hump, we'll be cruising right along. So definitely appreciate that feedback. Mayor Kulmann, now to you. Tell us a little bit more about what you're a full-time engineer. You've got a lot on your plate, and you're also mayor of a very large, important city in Colorado. What's on your plate in terms of your mayoral responsibilities, And how has this new shift changed some of your mission and scope looking ahead?
You know, it's been crazy, I think, for everyone. And as Adam mentioned, the fiscal challenges that we're dealing with are the same across the entire state. The city of Thornton, we're the sixth largest city in Colorado, and most of our revenue comes from sales tax. So when all of our businesses are closed, we're not getting any revenue in. We've watched cities around us have to furlough employees or lay off employees, and we've been really lucky in that we have a very strong reserve. So we've not had to lay anyone off. We've not had to furlough anyone yet. We've cut several services that people came to expect from the city, very high level services like mowing the grass in the right-of-ways or along the sidewalks. So some of that's gone a little bit more wild, I would say, in order to make sure that we don't have to lay anybody off. We are not hiring any of our summer help, and so we're relying on the employees that we've had in place to manage all of the services that we currently have, and we focus on the priorities, which are simple things like trash pickup, you know, police and fire, making sure our community feels safe during this entire crisis. You know, whether it's the pandemic or what's happening in Denver right now, we all feel the pressure that's happening across our state. I think from one of the good things that's come out of this is we've figured out ways to be more creative and allowing people to work from home. And that's allowed them to have a little bit more, I guess, comfort in being able to support their family and feel safe while they're working. And I think that applies in the city of Thornton as well as in my day job, where, you know, if you can focus on yourself and your family first, you feel the freedom to be able to work on all those other little things that come up. And, you know, talking with my constituents now, the big focus, you know, is, are we going to open playgrounds? Are we going to open our rec center? How are we going to get back outside and enjoy the things that Colorado's known for, and very slowly opening our businesses back up? And, you know, I've been making a big effort to visit all of our small businesses, and I try to post pictures on social media to show how important they are to us. And it's been fun, but it is a slow return to normal.
Yeah, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. And let's shift back to communications infrastructure. And this is a topic that I find so fascinating, especially in terms of access and how we've seen people working from home needing access, kids learning from home needing access. You know, we need this technology to connect people, businesses, and communities. And probably now more than ever, you know, it's kind of top of mind, you know, to some degree about access. And this might be a question for Scott. How is industry keeping up with this demand? And am I right that there's kind of a new demand, maybe for more capabilities?
Sure. We, as an industry, saw a huge shift with COVID from places of business to residential neighborhoods. As you can imagine, everybody went home, and they took all of their devices home. And you know, I have 4 kids at home, and so we had many devices all using the network all at once, as well as all of our neighbors were doing the same thing. And so just in my little area, we saw the broadband speeds go way down, and the wireless infrastructure was highly impacted. And that's just in our neighborhood. I know that all across the country, the same type of experience is happening, where the demand for this kind of infrastructure to be seamless and robust has gone way up in different places than we're used to. So from that respect, we definitely had to kind of change our focus and change how we providing this infrastructure. Now, the federal government actually listed wireless infrastructure and broadband infrastructure as critical. The Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, labeled our type of infrastructure as critical. So that kind of lofted us into a new arena where, when we were talking to municipalities, sort of understanding the fiscal demands that Mayor Kulmann just mentioned, we had to work with cities to continue building the infrastructure and actually shifting some of that focus to the residential areas a little bit more, so that schools could operate all of their remote learning and all of those things. So we've had to really work with our municipal partners to come up with good ways to streamline some of that permit processing, so that we could build the infrastructure as quickly as we could, kind of in new areas.
Mm-hmm. And are you seeing, that same, prioritization then at the state level? And this might be a question for Adam. Is it more top of mind now as far as getting Colorado back on its feet economically? Or has it always been top of mind because the governor has such an innovative mindset as well?
Sure. Adam, I don't know if you want to jump in here too, but we've been working with Adam's office to kind of help the governor understand the demands that we're experiencing and some of the areas that would be helpful for us to build the infrastructure where it's needed most. And so Adam, maybe you can,
So I would say telecom infrastructure has never been more important than right now, right? So I think about our ability to provide telehealth, for example, right? When people are staying home and need to talk to their doctor or healthcare provider, you need a stable and reliable internet connection. I thought it was very ironic that as Scott was talking, his internet started cutting out a little bit, right? He was lagging a little bit. It's like, but that is the truth, right? I mean, I'm not picking on you, Scott. I appreciate you, but that is the kind of the challenge we're facing all around Colorado, especially in our more suburban and rural areas. And I think also zooming out from our short-term problems right now, where healthcare is being delivered at home, so much more of work is happening at home. I think, if I remember correctly, the number of state employees right now working from home is around 80%. The long-term issue of how technology is impacting our economy is real, right? And as the cost of education and the shifting needs for skills have changed over time, technology and how it can be used is why we created the Office of Future Work, and why we need to continue to figure out how we can leverage all types of technology, but in this case, the internet and being able to connect to it for how commerce gets done, how we deliver education, and how we deliver our healthcare. And the infrastructure, is the backbone of that. And I'm really hopeful that the feds will continue to take action to provide more dollars to us. And I think hopefully, I know it won't be this session, but like next session, we can have another conversation about what new investments we can make around the state to build the middle mile and final mile, last mile investments that we need to connect communities that are either have no internet or very little internet connection. And I think that's true also about other wireless and satellite. So yeah, I mean, that's probably what I would say about that. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And you kind of Scott proved his own point by having a little bit of a lag. So yeah, it was
that's interesting. Well, I hope everybody can hear me fine. But one of the areas that the state really has been focusing on, this has been going on for quite a while, but really came into focus here in the last few months, was a project that the state broadband office put together called Project Thor. And the effort was put up to just build fiber all the way up Highway 70, north up into through Summit County, and then back down through Brown County, to bring broadband, really high-speed, great broadband, into some of those communities that have been lacking it for years. So that's just an example of how the state can really provide good funding for good projects that provide a real benefit.
Mm-hmm. And I might throw this out before I start talking about local, how the local cities play a role. But Adam, you mentioned to some degree an interesting, perhaps this crisis has really shown a different light on rural versus urban, families who live in areas that have technology infrastructure in this sense and others that don't. So it almost shines a light on some of those inequities. And I'm curious if anybody wants to tackle that, because to me, it seems like this technology could actually help bridge some of those divides if it's put into place in, kind of a futuristic way. But right now, it really shows, I think, some lacking.
Yeah, I think I'll say, and I think the others should also jump in here too. Those inequities, disparities existed before. I think COVID has really just shown a light that if you live in rural Colorado, this without a good connection, you cannot participate as equally in our economy, and that isn't fair. And that is that's a problem that we all need to solve. That's both states, the feds, and private industry that we all need to try to figure out how to solve together. But I think that is certainly the case. And like I said at the beginning, those disparities have become true just really across the board, right? Health disparities and environmental disparities. So I think the call to action now is how are we going to solve them? And I think there are a bunch of solutions and ideas out there. It's just, can we put the resources behind it and make it happen?
Yeah, I can actually add to that. The inequity, I think, was on so many different levels that were just opened up for everybody to see. We had students at the end of the school year, my kids included, that go online to finish the year. You have people that have multiple devices and access to Wi-Fi still having challenges to connect. But then you have the economic differences. So families who didn't have access to tablets or computers had no way to connect to an internet, even if they had access to the internet. And so we partnered with our school districts to make sure that every kid had access to a computer to finish out the school year. And then for those areas that didn't have access to Wi-Fi, the school districts and the cities worked together to find hotspots, or the libraries. They could go park in the parking lot at the library and connect their school-owned device to the library's Wi-Fi so they could finish classes. And then even on the business level, the big stores like Targets and Walmarts, you can go online and order your food or anything else that you need, either have it delivered or go pick it up curbside. But a small business didn't even have a web presence to be able to sell anything. And so they were at a complete disadvantage from the bigger companies.
And were they able to build those websites, Jan, or how did that, was there some solution that came of that situation?
We set up in our economic development department for the city of Thornton a group specifically to help small businesses set up a web presence. And so if they were able to have something set up where a connection to a phone call, even to be able to call the store and know how to get in touch with someone, because nobody has a phone book anymore, being able to know what things they have available in their store that they could deliver curbside. Little things like that. We had to create a department within our economic development group just to support those small businesses. And some of them were pretty successful, and others we've watched fail, and it's a big disconnect.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think as much as we see new challenges, it's interesting to tell stories like that on how some of those challenges are being met, and to some degree sharing best practices, as I know you do, Mayor, with other mayors around Colorado and probably around the country, to figure out how the local level really plays a critical role in this situation. And so this question I'll throw back to you, Mayor Kulmann. In your experience, trying to create a city that really meets the needs of your constituents, how have you specifically focused, or maybe it's a new issue on this communications infrastructure? I've read about cities setting up smart technology, smart cities. I'm curious what you're seeing with other cities around the state, or what you in particular are doing to meet the needs of your constituents.
What we found in Thornton is that we have a wide range of ways people like to communicate. You have the very new school of being online through social media and outlets where they can kind of control how they find their information. And then you have the local news, which Thornton doesn't have a local news department. We rely on Denver news channels to provide information. And while Thornton is the 6th largest city, we don't get picked up in the local news very often. And then you have the very old school style of, I don't want anything to do with cell phones or technology or social media. I need a piece of paper in my hand. And so we found ways to balance between all those different kinds of communication. We are having all of our meetings on Zoom now so that we can have public input. And we've seen an increase in people that have access to the internet to participate in public meetings. So if we're talking about a new park or some new program that we're developing, we want public input. It's been great to get more input. However, on some of our more social economic challenged areas, they don't want to call into Zoom. And so we actually have to have a phone call set up for them so that they can listen in. And we've been creative in how we make sure that they're still heard and they can write in now, which is not something that we've allowed in the past. So for us, it's been being able to mix all the different types of communication. So even in the age of the internet, still being able to have that pen and paper has been important.
And then kind of on the flip side, do you feel like you have the technology in place as far as fiber, the cell towers, and this might be even like maybe, I don't know if you do that as far as long range planning for a city. Do you have the technology in place to help people communicate best together?
That's a great question, because we partner with people like Scott to help make sure we have infrastructure in place to support that. From the city's technology side, we didn't even have Zoom in the city. So we had to create a new Zoom platform just to be able to get business done remotely. And so we've kind of embraced it full force over the last 3 months. Now everything is on Zoom, which is kind of the standing joke. You spend all day in meetings. Now you spend all day on your computer in meetings. So, but thanks to the work that Scott's doing, we are working on that infrastructure improvement. There's vast improvements that need to happen, as you've got 4 or 5 people in your house on a device that need to be online, whether it's for school or for work. It all needs to work at the same time. And I have noticed during the day that there are certain times when I don't know if there's a new show that gets released on Netflix that everybody wants to watch, but it slows everything down and we have to reconnect a few times. So I think we have a lot of work to do still.
Well, and I would guess, Mayor Kulmann, your experience as an engineer, you bring sort of an in-depth technical knowledge. You're of course an electrical engineer, focusing on the oil and gas industry, but you embrace technology, embrace forward thinking in terms of infrastructure. And I don't suspect every city might not be like that. That might be a question for Scott. How do cities work with companies like yours, Scott, in terms of what you need to help provide the infrastructure for Colorado as a private sector company?
Sure. Yeah. We operate in a wireless community environment. So we have 4 major customers, or really 3 now, 3 major customers: AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. And their RF departments, the radio frequency departments, can hone in on where the highest impact is happening. And we know that right now a lot of that impact is in the residential neighborhoods. And so the carriers are actually giving us new plans to build new infrastructure that can service those areas. And so then we take those plans and we develop infrastructure deployment plans for those areas, and then we take those into the cities and we start talking through how we're going to be able to build that infrastructure efficiently through those areas. Yeah.
And thinking of Jan brought up social media, which is kind of an interesting intersection. This might be for Scott as well, but every so often I see something on Facebook about 5G and fears around that new technology. And I'm curious how you and some of the companies that you serve, how do you deal with that fear, or what can you tell, our partners about 5G if they're hearing something that seems so negative?
Yeah. Radio frequencies, RF emissions are not a new concern. Radio frequency emissions have been studied for 60 plus years now. And so we know a lot about how these technologies operate. 5G is no different than 4G. Everybody's been working with 4G and LTE for years, and really no issues. What changed for 5G is that there were a number of conspiracy theories that got promoted and went viral. And so a lot of people believe things that they've read on the internet, that it's dangerous. And really it's not. In fact, 5G operates at higher frequencies, which when you are operating at those frequencies, you actually have to turn the volume down of the sites essentially. And the frequencies can't operate very well at far distances. So we have to turn the volume down, which is why we need more infrastructure. And so when that volume is turned down, it's at a very low power on the level of, a Bluetooth device or a baby monitor. And so at these higher frequencies, those frequencies don't penetrate skin. They really have a hard time even penetrating into buildings. So we're having to imagine different types of configurations where we bring the signal inside buildings so that people can still have that same experience inside. So the technology is very safe. It's been studied over and over and over again by numerous scientific agencies. If you want to go to our website, if any of your listeners want to go to our website and look at some of those third-party studies, it's all out there. We have a lot of good points that they can follow there. It's crowncastle.com.
Okay, great. I'm happy to include some of those resources with this video as well for everybody. So we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes, and I think I'd love to give everybody a chance to give closing comments on the topic. To me, just speaking from my viewpoint as a business person, technology is great, innovation is wonderful. This time of economic recovery and thinking about long-term recovery gives us a chance to, as Adam said, really take a deep breath and think about infrastructure needs and how do we help all Coloradans have access so they can work and learn and thrive in our state going forward. So it's a really wonderful, actually, time perhaps for innovation and growth in this area. That's sort of my thought, just coming from this from kind of a big picture standpoint. But Adam, what closing remarks would you have from your role at the governor's office in terms of communications technology and infrastructure?
Yeah, I think I like how you summarized some of what I've said. This is a really, disruption is good, right? It creates innovation and entrepreneurship. I know that that's happening in state government, and I imagine it's happening in every sector, right? This is making our state agencies look at, wow, maybe we can do all of our work from home, so why do we pay for office buildings, right? What are the kind of the technology needs that we need to try to keep our workers working from home, because we've seen productivity stay relatively the same. So I think this is a great opportunity for every sector to think about, how do we want to reshape how people go to work, how they get their healthcare, how they get their education, how we can leverage technology to do that, and then we start making those investments to get people back to work, because again, at the end of the day, the governor is very focused on keeping people safe and healthy, but we really know that you can't pay your rent, you can't pay your bills without a job in the United States. So we really want to get people back to doing that. Otherwise, I think, I just really appreciate being on a panel with the mayor and Scott. They're the true experts here. We learn from them. And I just hope everyone will continue to wear masks and social distance as best they can.
Thank you so much for being here. Mayor Kulmann, you want to give some remarks from your vantage point?
Sure. One of the things that people are really frustrated about with local government is how slow we are to react to change. And I think that's one of the positives that's come out of this, is that we have had no choice but to embrace change. And so what I'm hoping is that we can continue this path and be able to look at things from a different lens now and make sure that the inequities that we've seen on the communication standpoint are fixed, and we move into the future in a way that embraces bringing everyone to the table.
Yeah, well said. And Scott, give us your viewpoint from the private sector and how you're trying to help meet the needs of Coloradans.
Yeah, we're working hard right now. It's a new environment, and we're just we're trying to provide that critical infrastructure in a way that makes sense. And so fiber technologies and small cell technology is the new way. It's the new wave to bring that needed technology into the home and into neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that are highly impacted in downtown areas.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, thank you all. Scott Harry with Crown Castle, Mayor Jan Kulmann, and Adam Zarrin with the governor's office. These conversations are really critical. We wish we could do this in person. We're kind of known at the Colorado Business Roundtable for bringing people together from government, academia, the private sector, but we're doing our part to try to keep critical issues in front of our partners and still, of course, be very safe per the governor's order. So I'll throw that out, especially for Adam. So thank you all, and I appreciate all our partners with Colorado Business Roundtable. Look for more virtual conversations like this to bring critical issues to light. And thank you all for joining us today.